New styles of tents wove throughout the Agla, in the presence of great paintings of 12 looming stars upon the stone. "I see you did not listen," Gregor said as Reyth approached, "and that Schneider did little to stop you." "Fish poppies, Sir Ben," Schneider answered. "I am not the girl's handler. We were just going for a walk is all." The flower-adorned bundle called Gestalt sat outside Gregor's reach, near where she and Schneider stood, against a crumbling archway sculpted with smooth, lidless eyes. Feigning kindness, Reyth thought to take it to him, where before she'd been denied touching it, she'd ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Heavier than she expected, she needed both arms and her back to bring it to her belly. "Leave it!" hissed a scaled beast, upon 2 legs and blanketed with algae. Water frothed upon shivering gills. Frog-like eyes bulged out of a huge horned skull riddled with razor-sharp teeth. The reptile moved between the maimed people of Twish, its massive claws clutching boiling blue concoctions that it applied to dry bandages and nursed into the lax jaws of the unconscious. Glass jars filled with the kneaded purple powder of the sleeper's sallow were among the few herbal remedies she recognized. Startled by the monster, she dropped the bundle for her weapon, but after a brief admonishment the lizard, or was it a frog, returned to making its rounds from child to child, mother to father, brother to sister. She considered ignoring the order, but Gregor encouraged her to obey. "Noshkri is correct. Leave she be. We are administering medicinal alchemics here. My feather would hamper the treatments, if not undo them," Gregor said, shirt open to reveal humble but tight muscles bulging against scarred flesh, as he worked up a sweat, lifting crates, unfastening empty tents, and loading the injured into the backs of wagons. The scene not so far from the horrific renderings hung across the ruined wall, which a young woman unclipped alongside drying clothes. Orange eyes with burnt hair, she had the freckled cheeks of the mother's own, but wore the clothes and gear of the outsiders. The girl jumped at everything that moved, from a salabird to shed shells of nymphs who'd molted throughout the prior night. No breath-breather knew such fear. She too must have come from beyond despite her features. She must be a skinwalker or a shape-changer to mock them so. "Where is Arik?" Reyth asked. "He is here," said a man, old as the oaks and wise as the mountains. The fish of the wind joined them in the clearing from within one of the tents. The fish walked with help from Mira and Comet. Her heart leapt from her cold fury at the revelation. They were unhurt. Reyth spared the old windfish her strength, but wrapped Mira and Comet in her wide embrace. As she plunged into darkness, she didn't need sight to sense tension in their backs. "Ah, my peacemaker," the fish began. "I have not seen you since your uncle's foolishness, when the breath faded. However sorry I am for all that's happened, it is not enough. There are gnaw dues enough to pay in all Sangar to make this right." They 3 hugged her back, but not for long as she slid back and into vision, to see the tears Comet wiped from Mira's round cheeks. "It's me pap, Ray," Mira said between sobs. Comet hugged her with such worry and tender warmth. Reyth flinched, as with all these sights coming and going and all these cold shoulders made her feel so very alone. The sudden wails of a pained woman joined the bird-song of suffering throughout the Agla. The cackle-rooted joy of the soldiers drowning the stress of battle back behind her, a discordant and eerie note. Grinding teeth, Reyth felt herself slipping. "What news?" she asked. "I am here to see him." The fish, sorrow in the smile that lifted deep wrinkles, did as Gregor had, and drew her attention to how she clutched her weapon. This time she'd found her axe, and though he lacked the strength to force her, the windfish, with but a touch, brought her to sit and joined her upon the grass. By not forcing her way in, she put the others at ease. Gregor, who'd paused his labor, averted a wary look and returned to work along with the one called Noshkri, and the impostor wearing the skin of the mother's own daughters. "Your uncle is very ill," the fish began. "He is resting, but he has agreed that I guide you to where Futhinkir shall settle." "Me uncle is..." Reyth had felt it in his bones when they'd struggled outside her home. She'd already known this. No news she knew could abate her anger. "Me uncle is gonna die." "And do you intend to kill him yourself?" the fish asked, the gentle smile like the river's current breaking upon his words. "Ya uncle risked his life to fetch the Ishi. It took all he had." "Then he is weak," Reyth scoffed. She'd been made to sit, tricked. "No more." She rose with a defiant step backwards. The fish couldn't catch her. Like the bending willow he struggled to stand. "I do not know how you can stand to hear him. 'E's a liar. 'E's been helpin' Scylla. She killed Evren, not me, she did, and he helped." "Rey, you hear yourself?" Kamut interjected. "Kamut?" Her heart sang. The boy wasn't the man she'd yearned vengeance upon for in the far depths of her mind, but she found her passion in seeing him again alive and well. "The clumsy kumquat lives." He didn't echo her relief. He left his to-be bride's side, not to welcome her, but to face her. "I know what happened in Quatan. To Ev is hard, but I can't let you hurt Arek." Even though she'd grown weak, Reyth pushed him aside like a gale through grass. He persisted. "Your own uncle got hurt trying to save you sniffin' ass. Don't you care?" "I care that he's been lying to me," Reyth said. "He left me in the village just like Schneida, and oh, I could have been killed." Reyth shoved Comet again. "And where were you?" "Running like ya and all the rest." Mira answered. "Rey, me pap fell while going for the Eshi. We's lucky he's alive at all. He is dying." "Dying? He's spry as a aspen. He just out killin' and raidin'." "I fear he's had a stroke," hissed the frog-like Noshkree, wiping blood upon an apron stained blue and green. The creature sifted through a rack of tools from metal saws and tongs, selecting one of the former and aligning it with his bicep to assess the size. "Schneider? What kind of operation you running? You brought nothing but reagents. 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 But no tools. Look, you think I'm making amputees of mice and rabbits? Put it on the list." Schneider said, "This crew will hit a field hospital soon enough. I have patients, now, who cannot be moved in these conditions. What am I paying you for? Whatever it is, I expected you'd bring ingenuity and source your own methods." "You're not paying us at all until we find the Mithrite, Mr. Schneider," Noshkree said, indicating itself and the imposter woman with a massive claw. The girl gave him a pointed nod and went back to unclipping the paintings and yelping at insects. "I didn't expect we'd be playing doctor with the Mielenstadt now, did I? Forgive my short-sightedness." "What did he stroke? A porcupine? Blood ivy?" Reyth asked, hesitating at the edge of sight. Could she do it in the dark? Would Gregor intervene quicker if she tried to take the sight with her? "His blood poisons his mind," Gregor said, taking tally of salves and sutures. "It is more complicated than that," said Noshkree. "And you have the time to explain it all?" Gregor retorted, then again set to cinching clasps. "Arek is unwell. He will need to rest for several days, and it's unclear if he will ever speak again." "Watch, I mean!" Her shout came out with anger weighed against fear, so she shouted louder to hide the uncertainty. "He was just speaking. Did it get burned? Did it—" "It's my fault," Gregor said, moving from wagon to inspect his work. "My carelessness allowed for a dangerous encounter between himself and Gestalt. Those who are not prepared to wield her wilt against her. Arek is aware, and still he put himself under considerable strain to reach me in time to beg I save your life. I do not ask for your gratitude, but if you any way feel in debt to me, pay it forward unto him as graciousness. I hear his daughter is expecting." Gregor gave a fatherly smile to Mira and Kamut. The way he ingratiated himself so quickly rubbed her raw, but they returned his smile all the same. "I worry enough already that my mistake may cost many the joy that comes from the first meeting of a grandfather and grandchild." "And Evren was not gonna father too?" Reyth asked. "I cannot say what could have been, only what is," Gregor answered. She'd not planned on something getting to Auric before her. Could she kill a wounded man? Did she want to? As she wavered, Reyth tossed her moss-headed axe somewhere between her and Noshkree. "This can cut bone." "The mithrite could seed the wound," Noshkree said. "It's fleckless. Me pap made it. Cuts clean and clear," Reyth said, scratching at her chafed shoulder. "That is not how the mithrite works." "Better than going necrotic." "Thank you, Reyth," Gregor said as the large tree frog cleaned the green glass head of her discarded weapon. "Now is not the time for further violence." "Shush," Reyth said. "I didn't all agree to anything. I would just rather speak with him first." "Suffering delayed is harm reduced," Gregor said, then called back to Noshkree. "How long is that going to take?" "Several hours, at least. 4 arms and a leg lie outside my alchemical scope." "Triage!" Schneider shouted. "Single out those you can treat and leave the rest to burn." Gregor interrupted. "Take your time, Noshkree. I'll put my life on the line if that's what it takes to get every savable soul to Futhinkir." Gregor, pouring sharp-scented concoctions over bloodied hands, gave up on his other work. "I promised Auric I'd look at Reyth's eyes anyhow. Now that you won't be causing any more trouble. Have time?" And he took her aside and sat them upon a place where the snow had melted from the stone, but not before she cast one glance back over her shoulder at Mira and Kamut. She worried then she'd been all boast and no bite. No, she told herself, she'd only been stayed. "Me uncle's been poisoned, but still he goes out fightin'. This is a newer development. Happened a few weeks ago when we first met out on the trail." Gregor arranged Gestalt between them, across his lap. "Don't worry. Unless you draw the feather, only I can make her do harm." "May I?" Gregor pinched for her eyelid, his expression fixed, but he must have seen something, because he leaned very, very close. Reyth must have lost her sense for the stenches of fire and death that had covered them, because he smelled like flowers, sweat, and fruit. "Auric told, you said, the beast responsible lurked in a mithrite cave. But what was it? Can you tell me anything at all?" Reyth's aching eyes grew wet. She blinked and struggled to tell. But tears fell over words, and she broke as the thought of recounting, of describing, reliving, hit her. Reyth fought to keep her eyes open. She couldn't speak, she couldn't tell, but she could show. Wiping her eyes, she motioned to the murals, stripped of the frozen memories that had been taken down by the young woman. 6-legged forms, with shadowed segmented bodies, fuzzily painted, and 12 feckless stars upon their crowns. That's it." He looked on with confusion, then called, "Sophie, can you take some pictures of these paintings before we leave?" Yes, sir." The imposter girl, Sophie, seemed surprised by his question, as if she understood it as well as Reyth. How could someone so mousy and timid make it so deep into Sangar? Without the breath the weak could wander, Reyth supposed. After all, she herself made it this long. Sophie raised a device hung around her neck, pointed it at the paintings, and it clicked, and clicked again. From a slit at the front a piece of cloth spit forth. Sophie air-dried each cloth, flicking colored ink all about the agla, staining ageless art that predated Scylla. Sophie noticed, winced, and tried to rub the ink away with her sleeve, only smearing and worsening the damage. "Sorry," Sophie said. "I would not touch that," Noshkree said. "Manticore's envy grows wild here. We'll have enough of the anesthetized as it is. For the Fellfire's ectasis flex upon the material here. I wouldn't touch anything, really. Don't want to end up like the blind girl." Then the imposter's face grew red as Reyth's hair. She set to scrubbing herself raw with water from the canteen, then paused and skipped to Gregor and Gestalt, wading its presence like into a rain shower. When she caught Reyth staring at her, she skipped away and back to clicking. "The damage to you is permanent. You'll never see again," Gregor went on, disregarding the commotion. The cave dweller etched Miria upon your irises, the colored rings that surround the pupil. To what end? Blindness, most assuredly, but what else? We'd need an expert to say. Gregor called back, Noshkri, do you have experience with farform or jewel crafts? I am alchemist first and foremost, sir, the frog folk answered. Could you mitigate one? Not without the proper equipment, but though her eyes may look like gems, they are not. Flesh crafts are a different subject. May I suggest a transplant, perhaps, doctor? The frog laughed. Though the closest facilities fit for Myric surgery would be the cherish of the voice in True, but I hear they're a bit overbooked with miracle afflictions these days. You know, given the war you humans are having. Also, I do not have my spectacles. So sorry. Indeed, Gregor said, stroking his beard as he regressed into thought. I will just follow you. Reyth said, Not like me, uncle, but with me body. I'm afraid that a young woman sharing a tent with an old fool like me is a bad look. That's not something you can do forever. I can make it work, Reyth said. I won't go back to the dark. Noshkri, a favor, if you will, Gregor asked. I have limbs to collect and lives to save in the process. A transplant? You have the know-how? Yes, but as I just said, there are no facilities that could handle even your standard corneal replacement. A whole eye? We'd be luckier if we sought the reagents and brewed a true regenerative, but we'd have to cut her eyes out first. Could be painful, and the recovery out here? Near impossible. That aside, you assume I've knowledge of human eyes. You know the quality of Ilish eyes change as we metamorph from tadpoles? Put a pin in that. I think Schneider brought a doctor who can do work. You know your way around the body. True, but I'm not a doctor per se. Let's put a pin in that too. I have an idea. There are other, more Myric ways to see. Are there not? Yes, but she is no wielder. She lacks the second sight, and I am not in a sharing mood. I think a Myric gift would be the wrong choice. Gregor said, but could you improvise a graft? And enhance her? That's more rudimentary, but far more expensive. If you've a supplier where I can procure Avein quality, savant jewel crafts on a vagabond's salary, I'd do it for free as a finder's fee. Thank you for your time, Noshkri. I'll leave you to your gruesome work. Come, Reyth. I have an idea.